'92 we bought a V8 Rover from the wreckers. Petrol at that stage was 42 cents a litre. Government always tells the truth. They said the petrol never ever exceed 42 cents a litre. 1 week later, after we had the car on the road, it had hit 53 and rising quickly. I just went, grabbed this stainless steel from the scrapyards, threw it all together in some weird order. I don't even know why, how or anything. On a Friday afternoon, which was my son's birthday, the 9th of October, I threw it onto a car. This was on the Rover, this cell. Now I didn't hook it up to the carburetor, to the intake. I don't even know why I put it where I put it. But it ended up going, hooking up plain straight water through these neutral plates onto heat exchange on the 79 Rover SD 13500, not fuel injected, just carburetor. Disconnected all the fuel lines, all the fuel, everything else. Disconnected them, not left them on, pulled them all off. Hit the key, the damn thing run.
The Joe cell is claimed to function something like this. It starts with the water. Tap water goes into a conditioning tub. A series of magnetic plates with electrical current negatively charge the water over a period of hours. This negatively charged water goes into the cell. To tune it in, electric current is applied for a short period. Inside the cell, stainless tubes which are positioned in strict relation to the golden mean ratio receive an oscillating DC current. By tweaking this combination, a frequency is created that allows the water to break into its two parts easily. The hydrogen is fed directly into the carburetor, replacing the petrol. If it works, the Joe cell is a standalone onboard energy device. It's claimed to get about 100 kilometres per cup.
Well, the whole idea behind hydrogen fuels is basically a version of that, but the fact is that it takes a lot of energy to separate oxygen and hydrogen in order to break up water molecules. You need to put in a lot of energy to break the bonds, so that when you burn hydrogen again, it liberates a lot of energy and becomes water again.
You got the taco there?
We put the cell together and put it on his Rover, and lo and behold, it continued to running after we turned the fuel off. So we looked at each other and said, righto, where's the candid camera? Because it just couldn't be this simple.
Get with the Joe cell that's coming to you with the electropulsing hydrogen power that will blow your engine away. Get on the frequency groove and plug your caboose into the energy that's loose with the total over unity tower power.
I'd never done a day's science. I don't know anything about hydrogen, oxygen gas as such. Don't know about Yule Brown, anybody like that. Never knew anything about anything as such. And I do know a hell of a lot about mechanics, you know, pretty good whiz on that. This balloon's going to do one of three things. One is it's going to implode and flame and turn the balloon inside out, and in-rushing air is going to take every hair off me or everything else. The second thing, that's if we got the implosive gas straight off. Just for fun, we got these bubbles will trickle over down here. They're on there. That had a yellow flame to it. The balloon fragmented, and we've got a frequency in it which is hydrogen. That's a low negative wave. This is power on. This is dead straight flame water.
Over unity devices are sometimes called free energy devices, and we say that is an inappropriate use of language, because clearly the electric inertia that comes from the gravity field due to fractality is not free, and there's a price to be paid. In the case of specifically hydrogen implosion devices, the inertia that's in the hydrogen was put there by the sun, and that there took some work to do that.
Yeah. If you have that above the water in that cell, she will only suck up any water or splashes to that. Okay? But there's a different thing happens if you put charge to that.
We disconnected all the means of petrol getting into the carburetor.
Yeah.
There's no petrol getting the carburetor, there's no return garbage to the tank. That was disconnected. We run it completely dry. We purged the bowl of the carburetor with negatively charged water. We actually poured water into the float chamber of the carburetor and cleaned it out. We give it a long time to really clean it out, make sure it wouldn't fire. And then we got the cell connected.
Tell me what happens if you retard the timing. Well, what's the difference between my water and your water?
It's charged.
Go and get your water and stuff on there where you planted the foot, you lost
Phil, your best water, mate.
What's lubrication in your foot?
That's what I got, and he said it was wrong.
Because both works its charge in the opposite damn direction because all the...
But you see the positive is on the inside.
No, but what I'm saying is this cable is supposed to be up here.
No, this is the best middle pocket water. Yeah, it's a hole.
And they're normally set on top dead centre, but we took it to not with this. It's going to change the frequency in that block.
And it's firing, and yet it defies all logic because the water, there's no hydrogen, there's no oxygen going in. It is creating another form of energy that can't be explained scientifically as we know science.
Okay, and that normally occurs in 180 degrees and they'll still fire. Put the spark plugs back to the sun and he's still running the car. But it did fire 180. No. I don't want nobody else touching the car.
Alright.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
We in neutral?
Yeah.
Joe is very sincere. He's very mechanically intuitive. He's not educated in a formal sense, but he has evolved his mechanical intuitions. From his perspective, he's assembling what he calls an octahedral magnetic field, which I would call phase conjugate. So the opposing conic approaches of magnetic flux lines creates a kind of conic center, what I call phase conjugate or implosive. So I have been teaching about how capacitors can phase conjugate, for example, how an egg makes life. He has done that magnetically.
Told you.
So the laws of energy conservation in combination with the laws of thermodynamics tell us that you can't get more energy out of a system than originally went into it. And that's why these things just can't work.
It really doesn't make sense to me that this stuff could work. If you think about the water-powered car, for example, if you're splitting hydrogen and oxygen, burning it and getting water out the other end, you could make a closed loop where the water comes back into the system, and if you're getting more energy out than you put in, the thing will just run forever once you get it started.
Everything we know about the universe, and which is what science is about, trying to understand the way the universe works, the way the world works, everything that we know tells us that this is impossible.
Some of the guys who'd seen the car running think, oh, I think Joe must have put some petrol in there. He might have had some, he may have switched bottles, put another bottle in. And I said, but we passed that bottle around and took a drink out of it. It was just water in it.
Suffering from a kind of delusion, refusing to accept reality.
With extreme magnetic implosion, he's actually able to make the impurities in the water vaporize in a magnetic vortex. I believe that does relate to the use of the Joe cell classically for hydrogen, in that the concentric rings of the metal cylinder that were used, he actually would identify which end of the metal pipe was extruded first in the process of manufacture, because there'd be a little bit of ion bias in the direction of magnetic line up and down that metal piece of pipe. And if you balance those perfectly end to end, the concentric pipes, you create a perfectly what's called phase conjugate, or what he calls octahedral magnetic fields.
I'd love to have a device like that in my backyard. You know, I wouldn't have to pay for energy ever again. But it's not going to happen.
I never could understand why, if we had the possibility of having free energy, why we had to have energy we paid for. But that's capitalism and where our consciousness is at the moment. With our original group that we formed, which was called ASTRO, Alternative Scientific and Technological Research Organization. And so we formed this in the early 90s, and our aim was to research a lot of the new energy that was coming out at the moment. And Yul Brown was a Bulgarian inventor who decided to come to Australia after the war. He started a factory in Sydney, and he started putting together hydrogen gas generators and selling them as a welding apparatus. So we bought his first hydrogen gas generator and actually had to sign a statement that we wouldn't use it for anything other than welding purposes, although we wanted to use it to run internal combustion motors. Then we decided to make up our own fuel cell, producing hydrogen on demand. Got quite a bit higher fuel efficiency, and it even got to the point where one night driving back from Casino to Tabulum, this Holden station wagon, a 6-cylinder, actually ran out of petrol. What we were doing is we were supplementing the hydrogen oxygen we were getting from the fuel cell with the petrol. And this actually ran out of petrol and coughed and sputtered and then continued running. And when we got home, we found that the bowl of petrol was completely empty and it had been running just on the fuel cell. So that was quite exciting that we'd gotten 100% efficiency out of this fairly crude fuel cell. What happened after that was we started telling friends about it, and they started to have some success. Everyone started talking, and it seemed to get, everyone was getting excited about these fuel cells.
Fully charged, yeah. Fully charged. That's just still done without extension. Yeah, so we got, if anyone's got a pressure gauge.
Yeah, late in the morning, I get a bang on the door. It comes out in my dressing gown. Here's Professor Ron Davis, who apparently wrote up all the science for Yul Brown on Brown's gas, hydrogen and oxygen gas. And he's fronted at my doorstep, and he's driven from Sydney all night long. You know, I'm Professor Ron Davis. I said, huh? You know, hydrogen, oxygen gas, Yul Brown, Brown's gas? I said, sorry. And don't know what you're talking about. He said, oh, anyway, by the way, he said, I heard that you got a car running off water. Yeah, well, whatever. Yeah, I did, yeah. He said, could I have a look at it? I said, sure. So went out the back and everything else and so on. He's supposed to know all this stuff. So here's this big long cylinder you can see plain water up into. It's got a glass end and everything else. And so we hooked it up to the car, hit the key. He checked everything that had no fuel and everything else, so on. Fired it up, and that surprised him. I said, you know what's in the tank? Nothing. You know there's no lines connected? Right? We go for a drive. Doing too, mate. We're pushing 7,000 revs instantly straight out without any hesitation, and we're pushing all of us.
Yeah, well,
and the
three
car.
of us. Yeah, three of us and the car.
We're pushing 7,000 revs out in flaming third gear. Yeah. We weren't able to do that before.
We even took one up to the Nimbin Aquarius Festival, the 25th anniversary, and showed this Holden station wagon with a fuel cell in it. And to my surprise, quite a few people got angry, because they said, why should you be
You're not bow bouncing, you're not losing out, she just...
That's correct.
10, what's he do? He wants to steal the car. Other fella wants to take the cell. Fellas come everywhere from then on, you know? Just everywhere. And people come to me and say, oh yeah, you know, you got it for nothing, give it to the world. I say, well, okay, I'll give it to you, is that right? You want me to give it to you? Are you going to give it to the next person? It's plain water straight out of a creek off a hill. It has a neutral plates, it has positive outside, negative underneath, as we see. I now turn on the battery charger and you will see.
Hallelujah.
Now look down the side, work your way over the side, you'll see that's hydrogen going downwards, it won't break the surface. You see this vapour coming off the top? That's possibly what's running the cars. Whoever the guy is, Joe, never put one side up, never wrote any single thing, never gave one person any permission, any time, ever, to write anything about him. I didn't do it for making money off. Never charged anybody for any of it yet. Barry Hilton, Ian Haken, still selling things now on me for years. Wrote books on me and everything, got the information wrong.
The Joe cell, as used by its creator, takes quite a tangent from logic. Rather than feeding the hydrogen into the carburetor, the pipe is stoppered at the end and inserted into a piece of plastic tube. The engine is tuned into the Joe cell frequency, allowing it to run on a universal power some call zero-point energy. However, the scientific community call it pure fantasy, and never the twain shall meet.
What we're doing is setting up a frequency generator. This thing here seems to output something what tunes in the vehicle and makes it run.
The car that runs on water is not actually running on water.
No, it's running on an energy created by the water. That's the way I see it.
They don't use water.
Can't possibly be running water because the outlet from the cell is connected to a dead end.
I didn't understand why the vehicle seemed to start and run perfectly when nobody else seems to be able to hit it. This stuff works very strangely. So I just went on and did different cars, probably 20 or 30 cars. Learnt more information about things, built plates and cells and everything else. No electrolyte, no power input, different plates what shouldn't be connected. We get electricity off the cells, we get implosion, explosion, we get all these different gases.
We ended up getting a resonating field within the tubes. So we actually have tubes in place that aren't electrically connected but are within the electrical field producing gas. So we've got excitement happening.
They're just playing with little just half-truths, making things sound like they're possible because they have all the elements of something that's possible, but the quantities are wrong.
What happened with the RTA was to get the hydrogen fuel cell approved by them, they wanted to have a couple of cells in new cars that they could test crash. It was going to cost around $250,000, which we didn't have. A local member told a local politician, and so it actually got back to the federal government at the time. They offered us $10,000 and a new car if we would sign over the rights to this fuel cell. We didn't think that was a good enough deal because we wanted to hold some sort of proprietary rights over it. So we didn't do that. And soon after that, we had a group called ACES saying it was not in our best interest to continue this line of research. They stressed their point quite vigorously, even to the point where the local police said that they didn't want any fatalities in their district, and they gave us sawed-off shotguns to protect ourselves with. So we knew it was serious when the police were giving us arms to protect ourselves.
Had the Department of Defence through H Division were astounded at what we were doing. We showed them through the workshop over at the back of Joe's place. We were there for 3 days filming. I think they were amazed that we were just freely giving it away, that we weren't selling it.
The engineer from Audi come across with a ASIO government fellow, what we know definitely is Australian ASIO government. They fronted, wanted to see about me cells and everything else, so on like that. spun him out in a couple of minutes too. You know, we've had Professor Ron Davis wanting to take out these cars. He took the first one. We never got it back or anything else. Mechanics, engineers, physicists, government people. Government people following you everywhere, bugging you, threatening you. Beyond 2000 we're going to do articles on me and everything else, and then when we get calls, somebody must have been bugging somewhere and going to send me kids back in the post to me if I go ahead with the story. So I said, stuff it, shut it down, not interested. Then they try and come and take your cars.
Stan Meyer, we first heard about him in the early 90s. He had a Volkswagen dune buggy operating on a fuel cell, 100% efficiency. So I went over to visit him and see his factory in Columbus, Ohio. He not only had cars and buses running on this fuel cell, he actually had a Commander 13-seat jet. So Stan Meyer said he wasn't too afraid of the powers that be, and he was going to go ahead and develop his fuel cells anyway, especially since he had discovered the frequency which would split water easily. But unfortunately, he was eating in a restaurant. He got up, he said, "I've been poisoned." He walked outside, he keeled over, and he died. Within 2 years, we had lost 3 major inventors. We lost Bruce De Palma, we lost Stanley Meyer, and we lost Yul Brown. So even to this day, this fuel cell research is not strictly legal and not allowed to come out.
My challenge to people who say they can do this sort of thing is bring it along to university and show it off to the professors of physics and engineering and so on, demonstrate it to a skeptical audience, show us it can actually work. There's going to be a whole bunch of Nobel Prizes for showing all this stuff can actually work. I, for one, would be really fascinated to see, you know, just about everything we know about physics being overturned. So bring it on.
We could run almost all of our internal combustion and directly on implosive hydrogen, rather quickly, easily, and directly. So the lessons here are good, and civilization might even make it if we could teach the principle.
And for someone who has seen this and still believes there might be some sort of trick involved, maybe their consciousness is not ready to accept this.
Not interested in making the dollar, not interested in the business, not interested in the fame and glory whatsoever, at all. Don't want to go down like they said in history as a famous guy this time.
It's like Thomas, you know, putting his finger into Jesus, you know, into the wound. You know, he sees it, he knows Jesus died on the cross, but he still doesn't believe it until he puts his finger in there.
Don't want to go down the ground, don't want to go down history, don't want to be known. A simple guy, don't care.